Spirit is worship. And I'm going to share this with you in terms of your understanding. When you worship the Spirit, spirits take over. You cannot worship the Spirit and not smell like the Spirit and not talk like the Spirit. You cannot worship the Spirit, and I must say, whichever kind of spirit that is, and not have an encounter with such a spirit. So then, how do I know that what we are doing in church today is not worship? Check these areas I have mentioned. When you go to service, check this area. If what we are doing is worship or just making noises and rattlings to the Spirit, worship transcends making melody and harmony. This is why native doctors who don't know sulfur notations, they don't have a mass choir, they don't have a choral group. Yes, they can't make melody, they can't produce harmony, yet they are territorial commanders. I admit, yes, they are. In as much as this is a hard nut to crack, it is a hard truth to say. They are territorial commanders, void of all these that I've mentioned, because they understand the chemistry of spirits, because they interact with spirits in worship. In worship, they interact with spirits in worship. In case you don't know, native doctors or juju priests, whatever you want to call them, don't attend music school, but they command spirit realms. But it has to do with worship. So what is wrong with the church? What is wrong with the church? With all our spellbound, all our enthralled, fascinating, awestruck, and captivating melodies and outstanding harmonies, we could barely, in most cases, experience Him. I mean Him, except the artificial atmospheres that we've created. You know, we've managed to create stage lights and playing shows. But when it has to do with worship, I ask again, what is wrong with the church? Yes, what is really wrong? I want to ask you a very pointed question, child of God. When last were you lost in His presence, so that by the time you gain consciousness, it would have been hours you spent without knowing? When last did it happen to you? I dare to challenge you. This is understanding the chemistry of the Spirit. When last have you ever had such experience? I'm not talking about in church, just the two of you without musical instrument. When last can you vouch that you were so lost and caught up in the ecstasy of His presence that by the time you came back to consciousness, it was already ours? When last, dear child of God, when last did you, in His presence, as it were, in church, lost in the greed of the effulgence of His tangible presence, to the point that He took you to that realm of secrets where those puzzles in your family roots that no one know about was unraveled? When last did that happen? I feel His presence as I speak right now. The question is, isn't that what happens when native doctors worship before their deities? For those that have gone, and for what I have watched in movies, which is a prototype of what it really is, when you go to them for consultation, all they just need to do is sit down in front of their deities without a musical instrument, without a good voice that was trained musical wise, because they never went through studying musicology. They sit before the deity like you appear before the Almighty in every service, and then they sit there, could be on the bed floor, and carry out their cowries and begin to make oration, worship. In case you are not aware, as they do that, they play their medium and throw them, and then they are in the realm. We both will agree, even though it's quite difficult to do so, that when they do, they will go into the realm, backtrack into the present, whatever may have happened, that no mortals are aware. That is what they do. Can't you see that something is wrong, definitely, with us, the church? Can't you see that? Little wonder they regard us as noisemakers and make mockery of us. You know why? Because they are aware that we are ignorant and not taking advantage of the higher realm than they, which we're supposed to be operating on. When it has to do with worship, we're supposed to be operating on the highest realm. They know this because they know we grow up in ignorance. What they do is they laugh at us. If you've ever had an uncle or a relation who is a traditional worshiper, who does native things, you will ever hear them say to you, jestfully, "Come on, live here." You people are noisemakers. You go to your church and you make noise. You know why they say that? Because they know we are ignorant of what true worship. Jesus said, "For the Father seeketh such crop, for the Father seeketh such species." You were told that the time is coming, but I tell you that now is when true worshippers, they understand it, that we are not true worshippers, that we are not taking advantage and leverage on the higher realm. To worship in spirit is not the same as to worship in the spirit. Remember, I said this before. This is the misnomer we are practicing in church today. Be in the spirit. Please, for once, can we be in the spirit? Where? Jesus said to her, "For the Father seeketh such," verse 24, "God is the spirit, and they that worship him," underline the word, "must do so in spirit," not in the spirit, "and in truth." All right, so to worship in spirit is different from worshiping in the spirit that the church is practicing, which has actually made us so powerless, because we are not told to worship in the spirit. To worship in spirit is to be cloned by the spirit. You know what it means to be cloned? To be enveloped. He wears you like a garment. He puts you on like clothing. That was the word Jesus used when he spoke to the disciples prior to his ascension. He said, "Tarry ye here until thou be endued." The word endued is a Greek word, means to be enveloped, to be clothed upon. So to worship in spirit, not in the spirit, means to be clothed. You will be worn by the spirit. The spirit will wear you like a clothes. To worship in spirit is to be reproduced by the spirit. Yeah. That is to say, you are no longer the one standing with that microphone. As that moment of worship is so intense, you are not the one. You become the spirit at this point. You don't need to mechanically do this. To worship in spirit simply means that the spirit has borrowed your body to carry out spiritual activities that your body can't do. That's what it means to worship in spirit. Jesus said to her, "God is the spirit." In other words, you are being inspirited. I wish I could explain that further to you. It means you are being inspirited. At this point, anything is possible. Anything. Let me further explain this. The Bible says that your body is the temple of the living God. Like we read, your body is the temple of the living God. Now let me ask you a question of great concern. Does the temple, like your church building, does it worship God? Does the temple, referring to your church building, talk? So if the answer is no to these questions I just asked you, my question then is, how come you are the one doing the worship instead of the one that is inhabiting you, instead of the one that is residing in you? Because you are the temple, you are not supposed to be the one worshiping. You've got to come to the point where the Spirit of God overrides, the Spirit of God submerges, the Spirit of God takes over. Like I said, borrow this physical body, because it is the Spirit of God that bears witness with your spirit. When I say the Spirit of God, you know that I'm talking about God Himself as the Spirit. So when He comes, He swallows everything and then do it His way. When the native doctors sit in their shrines in front of their deities, what they do is they will consult the spirit and will move out of this body to the spirit realm and begin to interact with the spirit from their spirit. That is what it ought to be. So whenever you appear before Him, what you need to do is to allow Him switch position with you. And I guarantee you, you will never leave such service the same. You don't need to go to music school to become a worshiper. That's for your church, not for Him.